reframing, reframing, reframing. There's going to be lots of people that do know what that means. There will be lots of people that don't know what that means. And this session is for each and every one of you. Because even if you have been introduced to the power of reframing in the past, it's always very good to learn from somebody else, to learn from a different person with a different perspective, with a different frame of mind, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot today. And if you have not yet been introduced to the power of reframing, then excellent, tremendous. What we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to something which undoubtedly will change your life. Now that's a big statement, isn't it? How am I able to say so confidently that reframing will change your life? The reason why I say that so confidently is because reframing will change the way in which you see your life. And if you change the way in which you see your life, then it inevitably changes your life, because perspective is everything. The frame of mind in which we look at the world and the frame of mind in which we look at our current circumstances is everything. The way in which we view, the way in which we see, the way in which we perceive, no matter what word you want to use to describe it, changes our experience. So if we can change the frame of mind that we are in when perceiving a certain element of our life, then we change our life. And that is very exciting. That is very powerful. And the reason as to why that's exciting and it's powerful is because it completely releases the pressure of needing to change our life. And what I mean by that is it means that if we want to change our life, we don't need to be changing the external elements of what makes our life our life. We don't need to change other people. We don't need to change places. We don't need to change where we live, where we work. We don't need to change people's viewpoints. We don't need to change anyone's behavior. We don't need some strike of luck to just enter our lives and change our circumstances for us. We can change them, and we can change them without needing to actually change them. We can change them by changing our perspective, by changing the way we view elements of our life, okay? And I'm going to be giving some examples as we go through, just to make more sense of this entire process that we call reframing. And what I'm going to do at the end of this session is I'm going to give you a series of questions that you can ask your clients to help them reframe a situation. And you can also ask these questions to yourself to help yourself reframe situations. So let me give you an example of reframing. There was a man, and this man had a wife and a baby boy. Now, this man lived in a home with his wife and with his child. And the home was constantly messy all of the time. There was always dishes that hadn't been cleaned. There was always toys on the floor that he tripped over. The bed was never made. The sides were never wiped. The floors were never hoovered. And the reason for this was because there was always lots going on. There was always things that needed to be done. The baby needed to be looked after. The wife was coming in and out. She had a busy life. He had a busy life. They had a very hustling and bustling family life, which then resulted in a messy home, right? That's what we need to know about this story. The man and his wife and their child had a very busy family life that resulted in a messy home, and he hated the messy home. He would look at the mess, and what he would perceive was frustration, discomfort, messiness. The way in which he felt when he looked at the messy home was a series of negative emotions, right? He felt frustration. He felt enclosed. He felt like he couldn't relax. That's what he perceived when he looked at the mess. That's all he thought. That's all he felt when he looked at the messy home. So the frame of mind in which he was looking at the mess was one that clearly didn't help him, because it didn't solve the situation. It didn't fix anything. It just made him feel negative and made him perceive his family life and his home in a negative way because he hated the messy home. And what he did one day is he prayed and he wished. And he wished and he wished and he wished. And he said, God, I wish I could just have a clean, tidy home. That's what he wished. And he wished it again, night after night after night, until eventually he got his wish. His home was never messy again. But how did this come true? How did he receive this spotless, clean, immaculate home? He had received this because the situation that he found himself in was that his wife and his child were in an accident and they lost their lives. And upon losing his wife and his child, there then was no family to create the mess. And you know what? He hated that clean home. He hated how spotless it was. He hated how everything was immaculate. And all he wanted was the mess back. Because the mess, he now perceived the mess as his wife and child being alive and well. He perceived the mess as warmth, as kindness, as family time. He perceived the mess as a blessing because the mess is directly linked to a time in which he had his beloved wife and child and they were alive. So now what's happened here? He's looking at the exact same thing through two completely different frames. Okay? And by perceiving this one thing, which is the messy house, through two different frames, they create two completely different sets of emotions. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the messy home was never the problem. It was the way in which the man perceived the messy home. It was the frame in which he looked at the messy home, the frame of mind. But when something drastic happened, when he lost his wife and his child, he then perceived the messy home in a completely different way. It had gone from something that he really hated. It had gone from something that he wished did not exist and was not there. And it then transformed into something that he saw as a blessing. Something that he begged for, that he wished he could have back. If only I could have my wife and child back alive. And if only I can have that messy home again. I would give everything to see the toys all over the living room floor. I would once again give anything to see the bed unmade because there's two people living in this home with busy lives. And now the clean house, he is perceiving that as loneliness, as death, as coldness. And that is something he once perceived as a blessing, as something he wished for. So it's one very powerful idea, this. And it's one very powerful story. But what that story highlights is the problems that are in our life. They're not really the problem. The way in which we perceive the problem is what creates the problem. And we might think about that and think, oh no, but there are some genuinely really bad things in my life. For instance, there's debt. There's the loss of a loved one. There's illness. There's the loss of a job, anything, right? That we hear these things and we think, well, of course, as human beings who live in this society, those can only be deemed as bad things. But actually, it's the way in which we perceive those things and the way in which we feel once having perceived them, the way we perceive them. That's the real problem. I'll give you another example. Rain. This is a great example, this, because it's very simple. But it really highlights the power of reframing. Rain itself is not a problem. Okay? It is neither good nor bad. It is just little droplets of water that fall from the sky and come down in where we are, right? Now, rain, perceived through the eyes of somebody trying to organize a family barbecue, is very annoying. On the one day that I've organized it, it started to rain. Rain, perceived through the eyes of somebody from a country suffering with drought, of which rain, clean water to be able to drink, is a blessing from the gods because it will save my life and my family's life. Through that frame of mind, rain isn't quite so annoying anymore. In fact, it's a blessing, right? It's something we wish for. So rain itself is not a problem. But the way in which we perceive rain will either make it a problem or make it very good. And that is the same for absolutely everything. The way in which we perceive the things in our life, the places in our life, the people in our life, the events in our life, the frame of mind that we have upon perceiving those things, those people, those places, those events, they create the emotions that we feel towards them, which is either going to be a good emotion, a negative emotion, or simply just a neutral emotion, right? It's got to be one of those three, really. So what I want you guys to start doing is I want you to start thinking about the things in your life that really get you down, that really upset you, that really drag you down. The things in your life that you perceive to be bad, right? The people, the places, the things, the events. I want you to think about those in relation to the ones that make you feel really, really shitty. And what I want to start doing throughout this session today is I want to start exploring the idea of reframing them so that we can put them in a different frame, that we can see them through a different frame, and we can actually put ourselves in a different frame of mind when tackling them to try to make them a lot easier. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to turn them into things that we love and the things that we wish for. But if we can simply make them easier, then that's going to be a big win, right? I'll give you another great story. This is a brilliant story about the power of reframing. And so there was Virginia Satir, right? Virginia Satir is a very famous therapist, and she was one of the people that were studied when NLP was being created. And this story is just tremendous, I think. So there was a man, and he had a daughter. And he went to see Virginia Satir, the therapist, right? He felt as though he needed to take his daughter to see this therapist. And his reason was because his daughter didn't listen to anything that he told her, right? She was truly defiant against anything that he told her to do. She refused and wouldn't do it. So this man takes his daughter and he takes her to see Virginia Satir, and he sits down in Virginia's office and he tells her and says, Virginia, there's a problem. My daughter will not do anything that I tell her. And you can quite clearly see this man is frustrated, he's angry. The way in which he perceives this is a problem. And Virginia Satir said to him, congratulations, that is amazing. Well done. And he's looking confused. He doesn't understand. And he says, what do you mean, well done? This is a problem. And she says, well done for raising a young woman who will never be controlled by a man. So when it comes to the age, this young girl, when she comes of an age where then she chooses to marry, she will not marry someone who tells her what to do, controls her, and eventually, potentially, puts her in dangerous situations because she is defiant against men. So well done. You should be very proud of yourself for raising a young lady as strong and as powerful as that. And in a second, the man's problem was completely reframed. It had gone from being looked at through the frame of a problem, from that frame to the frame of solution, pride, well done, congratulations. because he had gone from looking at this young girl's defiance and confidence and self-assurity he used to look at it through the perspective of, she doesn't listen to what I say and that's a problem. And is now looking at it through the frame of, she will not be told what to do by a man, and in which case, I don't need to worry about that when she gets older. Whoa, my problem has just disappeared in a second. Because what I simply perceived to be a problem before is not only no longer a problem, it's fucking impressive. It's a blessing. And that was able to be achieved through one simple reframe of looking at the situation slightly differently. Why is this really important to us? Why is this really powerful? This is really powerful because as human beings, we are meaning makers, right? That's what we are. We're meaning makers. Nothing in life has a meaning until we give it a meaning, right? Really, I'm going to really emphasize that now because it's very important that we all know this. Nothing in life has a meaning until us as individual human beings give it a meaning. Until we give it a meaning, nothing has a meaning, right? No illness has a meaning. Losing a loved one doesn't have a meaning until we give it a meaning. Losing a job or getting a new job, bringing on a brand new client, making lots of money, living in a big house, having your health, your wealth, your happiness, none of it means anything until we make the decision that it means something. And we do that all the time on a constant basis, right? Because we're meaning makers. And a lot of the time, the meanings in which we give things do not help us and they don't make us feel good. How fucking mental is that? Right? And the reason why we're doing this is because we're not actually consciously giving things a meaning. We're doing it unconsciously. So we will experience something, right? We'll experience something in our lives, a thing, a place, a person, an event. I'm not the one to give you the examples because you need to be able to, you will have your own examples. Everybody listening to this, you will have your own examples of people in your life that make you feel bad, right? Events in your life that make you feel bad. And when I say make you feel bad, I'm talking about negative emotions that you don't want to feel. I'm talking about sadness, jealousy, anger, frustration, depression, anxious. Because don't forget, they're only emotions. They're not fucking labels to say, well, this is me. I am depressed. I'm anxious. They're emotions, right, that we experience. Sometimes more often than not, but it doesn't make us who we are. But I want you to think about people in your life that make you feel negative emotions, places in your life that make you feel negative emotions, things in your life, even if it's an item that makes you feel negative emotions, events that have made you feel negatively, maybe even memories that have made you feel and make you feel negative emotions. And what I want you to do is I want you to give yourself the empowerment to know that the only reason that those things create negative emotions for you is because you have given it a meaning. And the meaning in which you have given it has caused you to feel a negative emotion. The hardest part of accepting this is thinking, well, I didn't choose for this to happen, right? I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't choose for it. That person entered my life, or this thing happened, or this thing I experienced, and it happened to me, right? And you know what? You are 100% correct and completely valid. However, it doesn't then take away from the fact that the ongoing reason as to why we still feel a negative emotion linked to those things is because of the meaning in which we have given it. Let me give you another example, right? Because I want to try to give as many examples of this as possible, just so this really, really, really sinks in, because this is something that truly just changed the whole game for me inside of my head when I first learned it. And I really want to try to give that realization to you. A glass of beer. How someone reacts to a glass of beer is related to the meaning in which we give the glass of beer, right? Now, let me give you a few examples of this. Let's say that there is a glass of beer sitting on a table, okay? Now, someone who is strictly religious, they may perceive that glass of beer as a sin that needs to be avoided. That is the meaning in which they will give the beer, based on their past experiences, based on their beliefs, based on their upbringing, based on who they are, right? Based on their identity. The meaning that they will give the glass of beer is, this means that is a sin that needs to be avoided, right? Person number 2 may be a recovering alcoholic, and they may perceive the beer as a symbol of failure and personal ruin. The meaning that they give to the glass of beer is, that means failure. That means ruin. That means fucking disaster, right? Person number 3 might be just your typical average guy who likes to have a cold beer at the end of a hard-working day. And that person may perceive the beer as a reward for a hard day's work. Now think about this for a minute. The beer is just a beer. There is nothing about a glass of beer that suggests that it means anything. On its own, it doesn't mean anything, right? It literally is a container holding a liquid that has certain properties that we have labelled beer. That's it. From that point forward, what we do as meaning makers, right? Because don't forget, as human beings, that's what we are. We're meaning makers. From that point forward, we all, as individuals, interpret what that beer means based on our own inner experiences, our beliefs, our values, our identity, our memories. We create meaning. So why is this really, really, really fucking important, right? The reason why this is so important is because I want to put the power back in your hands. I don't want anybody listening to this to ever feel as though they are in any way being controlled by external outside forces, and then using that as a reason to not pursue something that you dream of, to not pursue a goal or a success, or to not be who you are and who you want to be. Because not only is it easy, but of course it's understandable, right? It's understandable that we would say, well, actually, no, because that person was really horrible to me. I'm not fucking tall enough. I'm not good looking enough. Actually, I didn't have the right opportunities. My parents were alcoholics. I got beaten up a lot when I was a kid. Blah, this. And these are all the reasons, right? These are all the fucking reasons as to why I feel really shit in this situation, and I can't push forward, I can't progress, I can't be successful, I can't be happy, I can't be free, I can't be fulfilled, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to put the power back in your hands, and I want you to know that every single negative emotion that you experience, based upon what you perceive, can be reframed. And the reason that I know it can be reframed is because we are meaning makers. If we can give something one meaning, then we can give it another. It's absolute fact. If we can give one person, one place, one event, one item a meaning, even though we're not consciously giving it a meaning, but from this point forward, I want all of you to consciously know you are giving things meanings. If we can do that, then we can change the meaning. All right? And if we change the meaning, then we change the emotions that are attached to the meaning. I'll give you a personal example. When I lost my dad, right? October 29th, 2018, when I lost my dad, I was 28 years old. My best friend, my fucking, just the best man you'd ever meet in your life. Full of life, full of love, full of laughter. Loved his home, loved his cars, loved his dogs, loved his family. Just was always willing to have a laugh. And I lost him to suicide, and he took his own life on October 29th, 2018, stepped in front of a train. I clearly perceived that through a frame of mind that was really negatively affecting me. And I would be crazy if I didn't, right? Because I'm a human being, and I just lost my best friend and my dad all rolled into one. The frame of mind in which I was looking at that situation was a frame of mind of devastation, of pain, of anguish, of anger, fear, confusion, right? Self-loathing. And what was the result? Well, the result was the meaning in which I gave the situation. What it meant was devastation. What it meant was, what's the fucking point of going on? What it meant was, if this can happen to him, it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. You know, the meanings in which I put upon that situation were ones that were limiting me, holding me back, making me feel shit, dragging me down, right? I needed to give it a different meaning. Because if I didn't reframe this situation, then I have no idea where I would be, right? Or even if, I have no idea where I'd be. So I needed to reframe the situation, okay? So my way of reframing it was giving it a different meaning. So how did I do that? What I did is I heavily focused upon the fact that there are people on this planet, right, living their life that have not only lost a parent, they lost both parents and their partner and their child in freak car accidents, right? That has fucking happened. There are people in this world that have actually experienced that. And you know what? Even if I was in that situation, then you can reframe that even and think there are actually people in this world, on this planet right now, living in war-torn countries who are locked up in cages as slaves. There's always something worse, right? Now, when you're in the moment where you're experiencing something fucking devastating, it's the last thing that you want to hear, because there is a moment, of course, where you really do want to embrace the fucking pain of having experienced something really awful. But you do not want to live there. You don't want to stay there. Okay, it's understandable to embrace that and feel that initially after something really tough has happened. You cannot stay there. That's one of the biggest fucking problems people make, is they stay inside of that place. So what I needed to do is I needed to fully, deeply, truly, right, honestly get my head into the fact that there are people out there who would actually wish that they had only lost one parent, because the situation they were in was that they lost both parents and their partner and their child in car accidents. That's fucking happened to people. And I was getting my head into the headspace of, what if that had happened to me, right? What if I had experienced that? What if on October 29th, 2018, it wasn't just my dad that I lost? What if it was both parents? What if it was my wife? What if it was my child? And obviously Posey wasn't born at the time, but I know that people have experienced that. What if I had lost a lot more that day? What if I, at the same time, I'd also gone broke, lost my home? What if I'd lost my own health and I started to deteriorate? What if I had experienced all of these really awful, horrific things that other people have actually experienced? If I was in that situation, I would be wishing to be in the place that I am right now, which is to only have lost one parent. As mental as that may sound, it's a fucking necessity to get yourself through devastating situations. And you know what? Not even devastating situations. It's a necessity even to just reframe slightly annoying situations, like rain at a fucking barbecue. Right? Because you've thrown this barbecue, it started raining, and instead of huffing and puffing and getting all angry about it, and your day's been ruined, and oh my God, this was going to be a great day, it always happens to me. Stop and think and get yourself into the headspace of those people that are literally dying of thirst, praying to the skies, that they wish that one day maybe a drop of rain will fall from the sky so they can have a fucking drink. Get yourself into that headspace. Because that then is all of a sudden, that's going to have you dancing in the rain, knowing it's a blessing, right? Knowing that you're getting something and you're receiving something that someone on the other side of the world is praying for, fucking praying for. So it doesn't even need to be devastating situations. It can be slightly negative situations. I'll tell you one thing. Am I still affected by bad situations that make me feel negative emotions that I don't want to feel? Daily. Because I'm human. Do I live in that place? Fucking hell no. I get the hell out of that place ASAP. Because I don't want to feel crap. I don't want to feel down. I don't want to feel fucking anxious. I don't want to feel depressed. I don't want to feel any of that shit. When people say, oh, yeah, it's completely natural, it might be natural, but I still don't want it, right? It might be natural and it's understandable, of course, because we're human beings. But I'm still not going to choose to be there for very fucking long. I can tell you that right now. And there's only one real, true, solid way of being able to get out of that place in an instant. And that is by changing the frame of mind in which you see and perceive the problem. It's the way, ladies and gentlemen. It's the way. Reframing is the way to do it. By changing the frame of mind in which you see the problem. And how do we do that? We must perceive the problem through somebody else's eyes. We must perceive the problem through the eyes of a person who would wish that that was their only problem. That is the strongest, most powerful way of reframing. And you know what? In this world of manifestation, of which I do believe in, by the way, in this world of manifestation, a lot of people try to avoid that. Because they think, if I think about something negative, then that thing will be attracted to me. But I am a firm believer that it is a necessity to be thinking about the negative things that you don't want to be happening to you, because it's the number one way of creating gratitude for the life that you do have. It's the number one way. It's the best way. If I wake up in the morning and something happens, right? If I wake up in the morning and I fucking stub my toe at the end of the bed, and that puts me in a slightly bad mood, I instantly go to the place of thinking, there are people in this world at the moment stubbing their toe at the end of their prison bed. Right? An absolute nightmare as far as I'm concerned, being locked in a cage and having your freedom taken away from you. And then I stop and think, I stubbed my toe at the end of my lovely big queen bed here in my lovely apartment. I'm okay. I'm fucking all right, right? Now, that's obviously a silly little example of stubbing your toe. But having found myself in the situation where I'd lost my dad to suicide, I firmly needed to get myself into the headspace, understanding that there are people that woke up. This wasn't immediately the day after I lost my dad. This took me a couple of weeks, right? But I wasn't going to live in that place for long. But I needed to fully get myself into the headspace of, I'm waking up this morning having lost my dad to suicide 2 or 3 weeks ago, where there are people in this world also waking up this morning having lost their entire families 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they would actually choose to swap with me if they could. And I think about how horrific that would be, and then put myself into that headspace, see the world through that frame of mind, through that person's eyes, and all of a sudden, the thing that I'm experiencing is something I would actually fucking wish for. Wish for it. Pray for it to be true. No matter what situation you find yourself in right now listening to this, there is always going to be someone else on this planet, more realistically, thousands of other people on this planet, who would beg, wish, pray to be in the situation that you're in. So the key is to get yourself into their headspace. Frame the situation in a way that they would frame it. They would frame it as a blessing because of all the really awful, horrific stuff they're experiencing it. Whereas at this point in time, we're framing it as a real devastation. We want to be reframing situations, okay, that make us feel bad. It needs to happen. Like, I'm a firm believer that it absolutely must happen. Okay, not only do we need to try to give this to our clients, but we must do it for ourselves. The purpose of this is to try to put our clients in a completely different frame of mind. Okay, in a different frame of mind, so that we can think, we can feel, and we can act in a much more resourceful way towards the issue. This isn't about ignoring the problem. This isn't about pretending it doesn't exist. This is about perceiving the problem that we're faced in a completely different way, so that we can think, act, and feel a lot more resourcefully when trying to tackle the problem. I'm not talking about ignoring the problems that are in our lives and just letting them happen and letting them be, but trying to solve those problems and overcome them through the frame of mind of devastation and pure negative emotion is never going to help. It's like trying to solve a problem with a problem. It can't happen, right? We can't solve a problem with a problem. We can only solve a problem with a solution. And the only way in which we're able to find a solution is if we can put ourselves into a headspace and develop a frame of mind which is a lot more useful than the one that we're currently in. And we have to do it with our words. That's the thing. We have to do it with the way that we speak, the way that we describe situations. You know, this is the way that we help ourselves and our clients reframe situations. When it comes to being a coach, it's the only way that you can help someone else reframe, because you can't do it for them. You can't change their frame of mind for them, right? You can't jump into their heads and see their problem through a different set of eyes. It can't be done. The only way that we are able to do it with clients is through our words, right? Because we can't do it for them. So we need to know how we do that. You know, how do we help our clients reframe a situation just through our words? Now, of course, we know that questions are the coach's power tool, right? That's our power tool. We need to know what to ask, when to ask it. Because we can't just be saying, see things differently, right? So this is not going to fucking work, is it? Just to say to someone, what I think you need to do is I think you just need to see the problem in a different way, right? There's an element that might be helpful, but what we need to be doing is we don't need to be telling them what to do. We don't need to be making statements. We need to be asking questions. I'm going to give you some questions now that may seem subtle, but they do actually go a very long way in helping a client change the way they perceive what they're faced with. So let's say, for instance, you have a client who comes to you and they're telling you about the problem in which they're experiencing, okay? Now, clearly, the frame of mind in which they're seeing the problem is not working for them. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem, okay? No one needs to reframe something that's working very, very well. No one needs to reframe a situation, a person, a place, a thing that's making them feel positive emotions, and those positive emotions are helping them progress through life. We only ever need to reframe situations that are not working for us, holding us back, dragging us down, making us feel negative emotions, giving us a lack of clarity, a lack of focus, a lack of understanding, a lack of energy. Just a quick side note here as well. In a world of such subjectivity, in a world where things are perceived so differently and everybody has a different filter system and everybody has a different perspective, there are some things that we fucking share as human beings. There really are. Like, not everything is completely 100% subjective. There are things that across the board would be perceived as not good, right? And I'm not talking about situations, people, places, and things, because those things can be reframed. But the emotions that we feel are quite undeniable. You know, if someone feels a deep sense of jealousy, a deep sense of anger, deep sense of frustration, stress, fear, then it is pretty likely, very highly likely, bordering on the point of certainty that those emotions are not going to be constructive for the person, for the individual. Whereas emotions like focus, clarity, energized, happy, forgiving, and do you know what I mean? It's just like any fucking positive emotion. Like, you can list a million positive emotions. It's difficult to think of them on the spot, but because it has to be unique to you as well in terms of what ones you really need in this one moment. You know, maybe you need to be open. Maybe you need to be calm. Maybe you need to be conscious. Maybe you need to be focused. Maybe you need to fucking, you know, there's going to be positive emotions you really need. And we share that, okay? We share that. There are negative emotions. There are positive emotions. The negative ones tend to hold us back. The positive ones tend to drive us forward. So when you have a client that's experiencing negative emotions, the chances are those negative emotions are not constructive with the goal they're trying to achieve. So when your client comes to you and tells you about the situation that they're in, they're talking about how their wife has left them or their husband has left them, how they've lost their job, how they've lost their confidence, how they don't know what direction to move in, they're feeling directionless, they're unfulfilled at work. You know, all of these things that we tend to hear as coaches. One question that I want you to ask them is, what are you trying to achieve here? And the here is actually very important. So make sure you've got a pen and paper, right? That is the first question I would like you to ask them. What are you trying to achieve here? Because what it does is it just takes them out of the frame of mind of the problem and it puts them in the frame of mind of solution. It's a very simple but very powerful reframe. And as you know at the Coaching Masters, we like simple and we like powerful. So when your client is talking to you, or of course, use this on yourself, ask yourself these questions. When you're faced with a problem, or your client is faced with a problem, and all we seem to be able to focus on is the problem, the problem, the problem, the problem. Why it's a bad thing, why it's holding us back, why we don't like it, why it's making us feel shit. I want us to ask the question, what are you trying to achieve here? And the here is this area of your life, right? What are you pursuing? This is a question that I want you to ask your clients also. What are you pursuing? Because once again, what it does is it takes them out of the frame of mind of backtrack. It takes them out of the frame of mind of retraction, moving away from something, and puts them in the frame of mind of pushing towards, moving forward, pursuing. Pursuit. It's a very powerful one. What are you pursuing? When you've got someone who comes in and they say, you know what, my life is really shit because my wife's left me and I've lost my job and I don't see my kids anymore and I'm feeling really down and I'm feeling really fulfilled. And that is obviously all a big fucking problem. And you ask them, what are you pursuing? There is going to be a mission. There's going to be a goal. There's going to be something they want to move towards, but that's being buried, fucking buried under the problem, which is how we perceive a lot of stuff in our life. What specifically do you want from this outcome? Okay? There's a little bit more added to that. Not specifically what do you want. What specifically do you want from this outcome? Right? Focusing again, not only on what it is they want, but the sheer fact that there is an outcome. It's a very cleverly structured question, that, because it makes the assumption that there is an outcome. So ask your clients that question when they come to you with all of these problems. Is this decision getting you closer towards your outcome? Or is it pulling you away? The power behind that question is that there is also an assumption that a decision is being made. Why is that important? It's important because, once again, our clients and ourselves, when we're faced in a situation that does not serve us, we assume that all decisions have been taken from us, that our empowerment has gone. Whereas even if your client isn't talking about a decision that they need to make or that they have made in that moment, but they're simply telling you about a problem in which they're facing, and you say, is this decision getting you closer towards your outcome or further away? You're planting the assumption inside of their minds that they are making a decision. And that's a very important assumption to plant inside of our clients' minds, because we are always making decisions, whether we consciously know it or not. We are always making decisions. So then we move on to the next question, which is, what is a more optimal decision that you could make? And why is that better? I'm going to say that again. Don't forget, write this down. What is a more optimal decision that you could make, and why is that better? Once again, we are fully changing the frame in which our client perceives the problem. They're perceiving the problem initially through the frame of problem, disempowerment, holding me back, negative emotion, I don't fucking want this. And we're getting them to see the problem through the perspective of optimal decision, empowerment. What can I change? What can I do? What do I want? Very different. Two very different things. And finally, how will you know when you have achieved this desired outcome? What will you see? What will you hear? What will you feel or experience? How will you know when you have achieved your desired outcome? What will you see? What will you hear? What will you feel? What will you experience? These are very simple reframing questions, but what they're trying to do is the reason why it's so simple is because the most basic of reframes is the difference between the problem frame of mind and the solution frame of mind. That's like bare basics. That's the most simple to understand, but that is where we must begin. We must begin by taking them out of the problem frame of mind and putting them into the solution frame of mind with questions like this. So those are some questions that you can ask your clients, but on a much, much bigger scale. And please use this for yourself before anything else, because it is an absolute fucking game changer. I will always choose to reframe the problems in my life. Always. I will always choose to see the rain through the eyes of the person begging for rain, than the person organising the barbecue, even if I am the person organising the barbecue. Why do I choose to see the rain in that way? That is because, one, I have the fucking power to do that, and so do you. You have the power to perceive your problems in that way, so why would you not? Secondly, I do not like experiencing negative emotions, no matter how fucking natural they are. I don't want it, don't like it. And even though I understand that it's a part of life, I choose not to be there for very long. And thirdly, it makes my decision making, my emotions, my feelings, my sight, my hearing, my whole being a lot more constructive, a lot more useful, a lot more enjoyable. Because what's the point with the other version, right? Using rain as an example again, we have two choices here. If we are the people that are organising that family barbecue and it happens to rain on the day of the family barbecue, we have two choices. We can either choose to fucking hate it, be angry, be frustrated, and say, oh my God, how annoying is this? I wanted to have a really good day. Or we could choose to reframe the rain. Look at the rain through the eyes of the person begging for a cup of clean water and seeing it as a blessing and embracing it and loving it and feeling it and letting it rain down upon us, knowing that there are people in this world who would give their lives, who would give anything to be in this position right now. And allow that to fill us with joy. Allow that to fill us with gratitude. Allow that to save the day. I know which one I would prefer to choose. Now, once again, of course, as human beings, we do feel negative emotions. We do feel sadness, anxiety, depression. I really do want to emphasize in a big way that never forget they are not you. It's not who you are. Don't ever let a fucking doctor who is desperately trying to give you pills because they're going to make a decent amount of money from it label you in that way. Never ever fucking let anyone label you. Never let anyone label you. You are you. You're unique. You're an individual. You experience those things in the same way that you experience happiness, joy, exhilaration, and fulfillment. Don't ever let anyone convince you that one of the emotions that you experience is enough of a label to say that's you, right? Because for anyone who says to you, oh, you know what, you're depressed, in the same instance, they need to say, you know what, you're fulfilled. Because you've experienced both of them at some stage in your life, right? One of them might be more often than the other one. That still doesn't mean that's who you are. So if that is the case, then we have the power to reframe all situations that we find ourselves in by giving it a different meaning. Because we are meaning makers. Choose what the rain means to you. Choose what the glass of beer means. Choose what the loss of a loved one means. Choose what the loss of a job means. Choose what stubbing your toe at the end of a bed means. Right? And even if the initial feeling and the initial emotion is, of course, a negative one because you're a human being, make the choice and have the empowerment to not stay in that fucking place. Just because it's easier to stay there. Just because it's understandable the way in which you're feeling. Just because it may bring us attention. It may give us significance. It may give us something to talk about. Be empowered enough to fucking refuse to stay there and reframe the situation. Any negative emotion, any negative experience, any negative event, any negative memory, you have the power to give it a different meaning. And the way in which we give it a different meaning is we see it through the eyes of someone else, through the eyes of someone who would wish for it, who would pray for it. And regardless of what it is we're experiencing, regardless, there is always a much worse situation that could occur that actually is occurring right now for someone else in this world. And if we can perceive our current problem through their eyes, it changes the meaning of the problem. I love you all. You are powerful. You're valid. You have a voice. You are empowered. You're coaching masters. The sheer fact that you're listening to this or watching this tells me that you do want to create those changes in your life. And you absolutely can with the power of coaching, with the power of reframing. You can, you will, you should, you must. Not that you must do anything, of course, but who wants to be experiencing those negative emotions for very long? So be empowered enough to reframe them. And I promise it will make a big, significant change, positive change. It will create a big, significant, positive change in your life.